Good morning, all you beautiful European people. You know, I showed up here with a suitcase full of nice clothes and luggage, like I do, but being an American, they were all just kind of mid, as my kids would say. So I went shopping because I thought, I have to look nice and European, so thank you. Oh my goodness. Today I want to talk about the power of play and the role it plays in everything we do in our lives and also in our work. But I thought I'd start off with a little game that I would play with my kids when, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, COVID was setting in. We were trapped in the house, and we came up with this fun game of trying to assemble fun little messages on our refrigerators using magnets. And so the game was simple. You had to use a magazine or some kind of packaging, cut it up, and see if you could put a fun little message to the other people in the house. This is one of my favorites. I did this one, but as you can see, it took 2 magazines and 1 package to do it. This is another fun one that my kid was off to college in the fall, and this was from Western Washington University. And I thought it was kind of funny if I cut out the M, these people look like weirdos. And so my kids like this one. Here's 2 more. I came up with the one on the left side. This is one from my existentially challenged oldest kid. And so yeah, you can see they just kind of we sliced up some things. This was my favorite. This was my claim to fame right here. I like this one a lot. I only had 1 magazine, and I was like, I saw this, and I'm like, this is great. I can do this one. And I thought I won. I thought I won the whole thing, and then my youngest came up and said, oh yeah, I got you on this one. This is from my youngest, and she won everything with this one little slide right here, or it's one little thing. The point is, we were playing. We were just having fun. We were trapped inside. It was COVID, and we didn't know what to do, so we just started playing. And it's kind of fun when you let your mind wander. You stop thinking about work. You put your phone down, and you just let your mind be creative. It's fun, the things you can come up with. And this is the sketchbook of my oldest, right here, who just loves to doodle, which is what I did in college a lot. Listening to lectures, maybe some of you out there right now have your pen and paper out and you're doodling away. This guy is just droning on about stuff. Well, maybe you're drawing something like this. And I asked my kid, what are your rules here? What do you do? I mean, how do you know how to draw a whale with a jet engine on it? And it's funny, he said, well, the weirder it is, the better it is. So just go with it. And it's so funny because to me, in my brain, as I code every day, I have to make things make sense. So drawing something like an octopus with a never-ending tail, or I don't know, a brain popping out of a cat, it just doesn't occur to me. But, you know, it's kind of fun to let your mind wander. I like to play solitaire. I used to do this all the time. I used to sit there, and when I had a down moment, crack up solitaire. I used to play so well that I did Vegas odds. Anybody in here know what that means? Hopefully, maybe you do. Vegas odds are you can only go through the deck once and see if you can win. And I did, and I won once. But it was fun. I was challenged. Crossword puzzles. When's the last time you did a crossword puzzle? I started doing these every day. I even downloaded it on my computer. I downloaded it on my phone, just as a way to get my mind disengaged from the everyday work. In fact, I used to do this when I was in college with my roommates. We would have a paper. We subscribed to the New York Times. This is the New York Times crossword puzzle. And we would fold it up in the morning. My other roommate, John, used to get up. He'd fold it up, put it on the table, and then we'd have a pencil and a pen. And the game was that if you figured that you knew a word, you could pencil in whatever. But if you really knew a word, you could flex and put in the answer with a pen, meaning like, I don't need to erase this because I know the answer. But through the day, we'd come and go from our jobs and whatnot, and we'd fill this crossword puzzle out. And it was just kind of a fun little diversion that we had. Chess is another fun little diversion that I tried to teach myself a while ago. Chess takes a lot of concentration and a lot of smarts and a lot of skill. You have to play a lot. But I thought one day, well, why not? I'm going to go buy some chess books. I'm going to learn all about this. That's when I learned about opening moves, gambits, things like that. I learned that there's more moves in chess than there are atoms in the universe. I don't know. I read that in a book on information theory. I don't know if it's correct or not, but it's interesting. So I bought these books. I learned all about chess, and my buddy Todd came over. He said, I don't know anything about chess. Maybe you can show me. And I said, sure. And so we started playing. I told him about all these moves, and I'm like, yeah, look, you can do this. I forgot what it was called. There's some name of an attack, some opening. And I'm like, look, if I do this and this, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, let's play a game. And I said, sure. And he beat me 4 games in a row. Shows you what you know. Well, why am I bringing up chess? It's because of this lovely-looking man who looks quite scary. Does anybody know who this is? If you just throw your hand up if you know who this is. If you do, aha, got 2 people. Brilliant. This man is, one of those people that is unfortunately unknown to most of the people in computer science, but today we're going to change that. Why? Because, has anybody ever played this? Well, it doesn't have to be this exactly. This is the chess game on my Mac. But if you've ever played chess against a computer, you can think, this nice man, his name is Claude Shannon, and he decided one day that it would be fun to see what it would take to program a computer to play chess. He did this in 1949. This is when computers were still mostly theoretical. They were also room-sized machines that ran with cogs and wheels and wires, and they looked nothing like what we have today. But he thought about this, and he thought, can a computer play a chess game? And so he wrote this paper. Why do we care? Well, this opening abstract had something in it that I think is tremendous. Perhaps this idea has no practical importance at all. Who cares? I'm doing it anyway. We're going to play around here because maybe what I come up with in this chess program will be of significance to somebody later on. And indeed, it is. He came up with this algorithm called minimax. And for fans of complexity theory out there, this is a NP-hard problem, otherwise known as a combinatorial optimization. The idea here is that he came up with a way of analyzing your previous moves to minimize the loss of your next move. It's a straight-up analysis of your past moves and a predictive analysis of your future ones. And that's what he plugged in to his chess game. OK, this is fun. I'm throwing down some big terms here, NP-hard, combinatorial optimization. Why do we care? Well, foul tarnished. If you play Elden Ring, you care because it is the exact algorithm that is behind just about every video game out there right now. And he just thought it up. Of course, there's variations. But when you play against a computer in a video game, you are using one of Claude Shannon's algorithms. Well, a variation of it, I should say. So I've mentioned this guy a few times. He is a notorious person for playing around and just seeing what's possible out there. He loved to juggle. He rode unicycles around his house. He made robot turtles just to see if he could do it. Loved to tinker. And that tinkering led him to write one of the most important master's theses ever written in history. Because one day he was sitting in his math class. It was a very obscure corner of algebra called Boolean algebra. And this is back in the 30s. And he thought to himself, this is interesting. We have ands and ors, we have nots, we have XOR. All these things had been known by George Boole, who wrote them back in the 1800s. And I don't know why he took Boolean algebra. No one cared back then. But he decided to take it. And if you don't know, Boolean algebra is just algebra with ones and zeros. It's what we know today as binary. And so he thought to himself for a second, what if we applied this to that massive room-sized computer over there that does all these calculations? I wonder if we could orchestrate these things in a way that we could actually use electronic switches instead of these big levers and rods. And so he came up with what is known as the digital circuit. So if you touch your phone right now, and it's in your pocket, and you're about to text somebody and tell them this talk sucks, you can thank him for that. He's the one that came up with the idea for those circuits. But as if he wasn't finished doing that, he came up with this theory of communication. And his idea was, at the time, what he was doing is just trying to work with the military, and he was trying to figure out how much information can we send from point A to point B, either through telegraph or through communication over the phone or whatever. He was trying to figure out how can we quantify that information. I don't care about meaning. Meaning doesn't matter. I don't care about the actual words. I don't want to count that. I want to count the actual information. And so it seems like it's a pretty daunting task to come up with this, but he came up with a way to do it. And he called it information theory. And he came up with 2 theorems on this. He's got Shannon's first theorem, which is sending communication over what's called a clear channel. In other words, there's no distortion, there's no signal loss, there's no noise. It doesn't exist in the real world, but he thought, well, if I have an absolute clear channel, how much information can I send from here over to another person over there through some kind of magical wire? And then he came up with his second theorem. The second theorem was, well, what if there is noise? What can we do to quantify the information that is lost, and how can we correct for it? As if that isn't enough, based on his work with information theory, he came up with the foundation of modern cryptography. He literally wrote the book. He wrote the paper on modern cryptographic analysis. AES, DES, all the standards that we have today because of this man. Now, I want to dig into this a little bit more because, again, the essence of what he did was to just goof around and find out. He decided to play. What's possible? No one else was asking these questions, but he did. So we need to dive into this just a little bit deeper so you understand the significance. Who here has dealt with stupid password rules? Everybody, of course. So the idea behind a good password is you, of course, want to have all this variation, so it's really hard to guess. But what does variation mean? These are the questions that Shannon asked. What does it mean to vary a password? Well, he coined the term entropy. And the idea that he was going with came from thermodynamics. And what he wanted to do was to take a message, just some communication between two endpoints, and see how much entropy that message had. Entropy just means randomness. So when you add these stupid rules like uppercase letter, number, haiku, gang sign, and so on, you're adding entropy to a message. The more entropy, the harder it is to guess. So you can see the foundation in there in cryptography. You could take, if it was just alphanumeric, let's say lowercase alphanumeric, that's only 26 different letters. You can apply an exponential calculation to that, come up with the entropy, which is not very much. And then it's easy to use a frequency analysis on that, do some backwards guessing, and off you go. This is the underpinnings of Shannon's first theorem. This is his entropy equation. What Shannon realized is this calculation is not something that you can just throw simple math at. It's actually variant, meaning that there is a frequency analysis to English or to whatever language you're using that will dictate how much entropy is in there. Now, I know I'm kind of going off a little bit. Just stay with me here because this is important. What Shannon realized is that when we're speaking to each other and sending a message, there's actually structures in that message, words, that are meaningless. You don't need to send those words. So here's all the noise words in English. The top one, of course, being the, and then you have to, of, and, is, that, and so on. So we can see this in action. This is Shannon's first theorem in action. What can I do to a message to make it smaller, easier to send across a wire? How can I compress a message so that there's less ticks on a Morse code thing, or maybe less bits sent across a wire? Shannon came up with the word bit, by the way. So this right here is fairly straightforward. You probably can add a few words here to understand that a banana tree is actually an herb, which is interesting. This is that same message if I put in the noise words. So if you bounce between the two, and you're thinking, well, gosh, if I'm the Morse code operator, that's a lot less ticking I have to do with my finger. This is why we send messages today like this, because we innately understand that we have to remove redundancy and increase what Shannon called surprise. Surprise is how much information a message actually contains. So here, this message is fairly straightforward. And notice what we've evolved to do. This is going down Shannon's path, the things he described back in the 40s. We have evolved to use emojis, to use GIFs, to transport information across a wire, which is pretty neat. Anyway, he wrote about this again, prediction and entropy of printed English. Again, he wrote about cryptographic analysis and information theory. We owe our careers to him. He has been compared to Einstein, to Newton. He is one of the towering figures of the 20th century. Yes, he worked with Turing back in the day, trying to figure out what a computer could do. Why don't we know who Claude Shannon is? Because he didn't care to go out and become, Neil deGrasse Tyson of the day. He didn't want to be in front of the public eye. What he wanted to do is go in his garage and see what's possible. If you use Claude Sonnet, Claude Code, now you know where Claude comes from. It's from Claude Shannon. As I mentioned, he created the digital circuit. Sorry for the OCD folks out there, I have my alignment a little bit off here. He came up with the term bit, the one-time pad, if you've ever heard of that. It's the only cipher proven mathematically to be unbreakable, his invention. Compression theory, if you ever zip up or compress a file, it's based on the work of Claude Shannon and how to compress a message and send it. That is directly his work. Error correction. How do we send stuff across a noisy wire? Well, you never are able to send something without bit loss, a bit being flipped. That error correction, those algorithms, That's from him. If you're curious about him, which you should be, there's a great book, A Mind at Play, and you can see some of the things that he got into. He would randomly show up at conferences, at cryptographic conferences. He would go to chess conferences or even just chess games. Just show up, watch what was going on, sit in the corner, and someone would recognize him, and all of a sudden he'd be mobbed, as you can imagine, by people wanting his autograph. Anyway, great guy. You can find this book on Amazon. It's also on Audible, and one of the best books I've ever read. Gets really deep into math and other things. Okay, let's move forward a little bit to the 70s and what people did at the advent of the personal computer. This is the Homebrew Computer Club, and it's a bunch of what we used to call neckbeards, a bunch of folks who liked to tinker and to play with computers and see what's possible. I'm not talking about programming necessarily. I'm talking about the actual hardware. These guys were electrical engineers. They were mathematics professors. They were just students at Stanford and Berkeley. This all took place in Silicon Valley. Some of them went to Berkeley and were actually just activists, but they liked to go home and put together electronics and see what they could do to play around with computers. Now, the reason why is that back in the day, this is what computers were. This is in the 60s and 70s. This, of course, is IBM. And the model of this is the IBM 1401. Used both magnetic tape and used punch cards. And the fun thing about this machine is you could program it using machine language, if you like, or you could actually use the first basic language. It only ran you about $100,000 a month if you're a business, and all you needed was a couple of rooms and to hire some very, very smart engineers that knew how to calculate stuff, and then you could do some accounting. Very exciting. Point is that if you were a hobbyist programmer or you knew about computers, this was completely out of your reach. There's no way you'd ever have time on the machine in order to do anything. Until the mid-70s, when they started coming out with these personal computers. This is the IBM 5100, and you could send in this clip, this money order right here. You could send in, what is it today, $125,000 for this little machine that has 64K of RAM, 16-bit processor. What could you do with it? Well, depends. How well can you program? How much BASIC do you know? Not Microsoft BASIC, the original one. How much machine language do you know? You'd have to tell it what to do. This is not even hobbyist stuff. They couldn't afford anything like this until Popular Electronics came up with the Altair 8800. And this is, again, a tinkerer's dream. For $450, you can get the processor, you can get this cool-looking chassis, you get all the switches, you get everything you need, power supply and so on. The thing you didn't have was a keyboard. You also didn't have a monitor. That was it. That line of switches right there is your keyboard. The monitor is the blinking lights. So what you had to do is you had to go in there and you had to fix up the switchboards inside. I don't know the details on this, so I might screw it up. But you had to fix up the different switchboards to do different things, and then you could flip the switches and run your program. Why do we care about this? What does it matter? You have to shift your mind back to the 60s and 70s. We're talking about the 70s specifically. But back then, computers were these fantastical ideas. This, of course, is HAL. Switch the letters around, shift it once. IBM, HAL, I'm sure most of you know that. But the idea was that it was this scary thing that if we shipped a bug, which is what happened to HAL, by the way, we shipped him with a bug, and he killed the entire crew. And you know, it's kind of funny because it seems like a macabre movie. It seems like it's a horror story where its computer went crazy. Well, he didn't go crazy. He was told to lie. But his basic programming said that he can't lie. And so it's kind of funny when you know that and you go watch the movie again, you can see throughout the movie he is trying to clue in the crew. In fact, there's one, I don't know if you remember the scene, hopefully you've seen this movie, where one of the astronauts is holding up a sketch and he's showing Hal the sketch. And he says, "Oh, you're getting very good at that, Dave." And so he's like, "I have questions about this mission. Isn't it strange the way this mission was put together in such secrecy? Don't you think that's strange?" And it's crazy when you know the ending and you know how this movie ends, to hear him try and give hints to the crew so they can figure it out so he doesn't have to kill them. Anyway, I think that's nuts. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is people feared computers. That's the whole point. And these people were like, you know what? I don't want to do that. This image right here is a sketch from the Homebrew Computer Club. It's one of the, I think this came from newsletter, well, it says right there. I can't really see it. Anyway, one of the newsletters, looks like '07, where someone was just sketching the people that showed up. And what they did is they got together and they thought, whoops, sorry, There we go. They got together. They just passed out these flyers all around the campuses of Stanford and Berkeley. And they said, hey, are you building your own computer? So are we. Come show up and talk to us. If you look up there on the top left, you see the name Steve. Not quite sure who we're talking about here. Have a good idea. You can see the date, February 17th, 1975. This is from Fred Moore, one of the founders of the club. We're all going to get together at Gordon French's house. And this is the address. Right here, we have the address. Menlo Park, not in wherever it is on the east coast of the US. Menlo Park is also another town in Silicon Valley. I went to Google Maps, and I wanted to get a screenshot of this house, because why not? But that is the garage right there where these people met for the very first time. And you might be thinking, why do I care? Why do I care about these old dudes getting together and talking about computers? I'll get to that in a second, but this guy is great. This is what he thinks of Google. I love this, and I love the fact that they captured it and kept it. You'd think somewhere they'd figure it out. This little excerpt describes the very first meeting of the Homebrew Computer Club. It is from Bob Lash, 2016. I'll have a link to this journal for you to, if you want to read it. But basically, he was just talking about there's 32 people here, 32 people who are the only people on the planet to have a personal computer. And let that settle in. We all have our laptops, we have our phones, we probably have 2 or 3 laptops. Some of us have 4 with us, actually. But these people built their own, which is nuts. And they all got together to try and figure out what is going to happen in the future. This is, right here, this is the first newsletter, because they decided to recap what the club was doing. They typed it up, distributed it, mailed it out to all the people and said, here's when our next meeting is, and so on. But this is the part right here that I think is fascinating. This is the first time they all met, and they had to sit and think through this question. What will people do with a computer in their home? Could you imagine being in that meeting? And again, it's just a bunch of nerds playing around. They would swap parts and build their own computers, just sitting there trying to figure out what the future holds. I love this right here. They got it. They nailed it pretty well. There's a lot of games in here. It's going to automate your house. You're going to build small robots and turtles. I think they nailed that one, which is, I don't know what their fascination with turtles was. Here's 2 of the people that were at that meeting. This is, of course, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They went on to do some pretty cool things with computers. Whether you like Apple or not, they helped pave the way for what a personal computer could mean, not only in your home, but also in your pocket. Now, yes, of course, there are phones out there that could do the things the iPhone could do, but the iPhone was the pivot into having a computer, an actual machine in your pocket, which I think is nuts. Here's another excerpt from Bob Lash's journal, which I thought was pretty neat. He just goes to these meetings and he's like, I wonder if I could do this, if I change this thing around. And he just sat there and built one of his computers right there in the garage. Another time, he sat next to Steve Wozniak, who described floating point math routines to him and even wrote them out on Apple's technical paper. Could you imagine having this piece of computer history? Yeah, he just sat next to Woz. I'm like, hey, how do you do floating point math, which is not easy to do with a computer, especially back then. But I love this last line. The thrill of actually seeing it all work was indescribable. And this, to me, is the joy of trying something. It could be code, it could be whatever, and you try something, you're like, oh my God, it works. If you want to know more about Phil, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call him Phil Lesh, Bob Lash. If you want to know more about his journal, there's a QR for you. I'll leave that up for a few seconds. It's a fun read. It's about I would say a 5 or 6 page journal entry that he just wrote all about being at the Homebrew Club. This is the archive of all the newsletters. They scanned them all in. It's considered a piece of internet history, or piece of computing history, I should say. So if you want to read these, here's a QR code for that. And from here, we're going to skip on out of the 70s and into the early 2000s and late 90s. So we've seen how play is actually not just a fun thing to do, it's actually a pivotal thing to do. It is at the epicenter of every great innovation when someone thinks, I wonder if this is possible. I wonder if I can do this. It could even be the stupidest thing you've ever seen in your entire life. Does anyone know what the $1 Million Homepage is? Yes, good. There's one person in here. This person, Alex 2 is his name, was sitting in his college dorm at the age of 21, And he thought, and this is the advent of the whole dot-com boom as people are starting to make money in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he thought, I wonder what would happen if I sold a pixel per dollar on my homepage. And that's that. We just place ads, and the whole idea of $1 million homepage maybe will take off. Can you guess that it did? It became a phenomenon because it was such a stupid idea, and it was so wonderful. Entrepreneurs around the world are like, hey, what can we do to cash in on this idea? Of course. Anyway, he ended up selling this thing for $350,000 after he made his million, so he's quite well off, at least at the time. Here we get a chance to annoy the hell out of the person around you. Has anybody ever heard of hamster dance? It's probably one of the dumbest things ever created. If you want to play the song that goes along with the hamsters, yes, that's the QR code. It'll take you to YouTube. You can see the original one. The song that goes with it is one of the most annoying songs in the world, and I think this is why people loved it, because they'd crank up their speakers, and they turn it on in the office, and it'd drive everyone crazy. Because this is just a GIF of a bunch of little hamsters dancing around and twirling. It's so stupid. Why does it even exist? Well, it's just a couple of friends. Right? A couple of friends were hanging out in New York one day, and Deidre Lockhart was like, let's have a competition and see if we can create something that gets the most views. Whoever gets the most views wins. And one of the friends of theirs, I think the last name was Hampton, I can't remember, something like that. But anyway, they're like, well, let's make it Hampster. And so the misspelling of hamster is actually intentional. And so, yeah, just threw together this page, and all it had was a song from Disney's animated Robin Hood. In the very beginning, this rooster kind of struts along the pages, and I'm not going to sing the whole thing. But anyway, they sped it up because they thought it was funny. Thus was born the very first internet meme. That was the very first meme. From there, these people capitalized on hamster dance media. They formed a whole media company. They made millions of dollars. It's just ridiculous, just from goofing around and being a weirdo. Have you ever wondered where the term meme came from, by the way? It's kind of interesting to dig into it, because nowadays we think of memes as just jokes with captions or GIFs or something like that. But the first meaning of a meme was just a unit of cultural transmission, which basically means you're using a symbol, you're using a notion to communicate an idea or communicate information. We could even go back to Claude Shannon again on this, information theory, where using words isn't precise enough. Maybe using words doesn't impart the information you're going for. But if you send somebody the image from Lord of Rings, when you say, one does not simply walk into NDC Porto and give a keynote or something like that, you get the idea of what that means. You don't have to use all those words. So anyway, just a little sidebar on what a meme is. All right, so now we can skip ahead a few years. Anybody ever heard of game never ending? No, probably not. This is an MMO, massive online game, and what these people were trying to do, it's this company called Ludus Corp. I'll talk about them in a second. These people were trying to come up with a way that you could have fun, right? You could just play around and have fun in these massive online worlds as opposed to going out there like a World of Warcraft or EverQuest and killing things. And they thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could just spread some love and joy and reward people for exploring and just engaging, having fun. So they formed this corporation called Ludicorp. Ludus in Latin means to play. And they thought, well, this is fun. Person on the left side is Stuart Butterfield. This is Katerina Fake, and I don't have a picture for him, but I like to think that is him anyway. So squint your eyes. This is Jason Klassen. So these three founded this company, Ludicorp. And what they wanted to do, again, is just to have people be able to play. And one day, one of them thought about this idea of like, hey, I wonder if we could allow people to upload pictures. And this is in the early 2000s, and we didn't have photo sharing back then or picture sharing. And so they thought, well, why not? Let's have them share pictures. And pretty soon that became the whole reason people would play the game, is to share pictures with each other online. And then Stuart Butterfield thought, geez, they really like this picture sharing thing. I wonder if we stripped away the game and just let them share pictures. And thus was born Flickr. And Flickr, if you don't know, is a photo sharing app. It's one of the first ones. Yahoo bought it a few years later for $25 million. I have it in my notes. Yep, $25 million. Butterfield and gang got paid out a lot of money, and from this idea of just goofing around and having fun was born this massive company. Fast forward a few years, he did his time at Yahoo. Yahoo ground Flickr into the ground. It's still around, but now photo sharing is everywhere. Instagram is probably in all of our pockets. We have Facebook. Probably one of the primary drivers in terms of communication is photo sharing, movie sharing on both of those platforms. But so Stuart Butterfield is like, all right, I like this idea. I'm going to keep going with this notion of play. I want to get back to this notion of it. So he created this game called Glitch, and he founded a company called Tiny Speck. He went to VCs in Silicon Valley, Andreessen Horowitz, one of the biggest ones, and he said, hey, I'm the guy that did Flickr. And they're like, cool, whatever your idea is, here's $1.5 million. Go make it. And he said, all right, great. I am going to build this really cool game, and it's going to be exploratory, and we're going to, and they're like, whatever, just go make it. Go do it. Go do your magic. And so, okay, fine, fine, fine. The only problem with Tiny Speck, the company, was that their developers were spread around Vancouver, San Francisco, and New York. And they had to have a way of communicating. Now, this is about 2007, 2008 timeframe. And so, yes, you could use something like GitHub, which was just getting off the ground. You could use decentralized Tortoise SVN if you wanted to. SourceForge, there's a name for you. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to be able to communicate through instant messaging. They wanted to have meetings. They wanted to share files and also share images and plans. And so they came up with their own internal system of working together. They just were like these very bright programmers and came up with their own internal system. So anyway, the next VC meeting, or one of the VC meetings, I should say, Butterfield is standing in front of Andreessen Horowitz, the VCs, and he says, well, we've got this game. He's showing the game, and he goes, oh, and by the way, we also came up with this other cool app that we think is pretty neat for internal communication. We call it Slack. And out of, once again, lightning strikes this man. Again, just something that they made just because they needed it and it was fun to do, making this very fun video game, they created Slack, which is, love it or hate it, it exists. I love this person's mantra. Playfulness is a serious business. He never said no. He just decided to try it. Let's just have fun and see where it takes us, which is great. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, that's neat, Rob, but let's admit that this person got lucky. And I would say, yes, he got lucky. He did let his creative spark flow, but he, I think, also had an innate sense of what would work. And he kind of just let his intuition guide his path, which is why I want to talk to you about this nice person who also embraces fun. This is now fast-forwarding into the modern day. This person's name is Pieter Levels, which I'm sure some of you must have heard of. Pieter Levels is a freak of an entrepreneur. He just thinks of an idea, doesn't question it, and builds it. He is a digital nomad, which means he roams the world. It's just him and his laptop. He doesn't have any staff, doesn't have any support. But what he likes to do is he likes to create startups. And you've probably read about him, 12 startups in 12 months. And he has come up with his tech stack that he never veers from, HTML, CSS, JavaScript using jQuery, by the way. He doesn't use any massive front-end framework, and PHP. With that simple set of tools, he and his laptop have made ridiculous businesses, literally ridiculous. Here's some that he came up with during that time. Play the music in your inbox. If your friends send you links to songs all the time, you could actually create playlists from them. Why not? I love this one. Go fucking do it. I can say that word because we're in Europe. Sorry, YouTube. You basically log in here, you put in a credit card number, and you put down a number saying, I am going to do this by this time, and if I don't do it, charge my card $100, let's say. That's the core of his idea. And he built it. Another one is real-time YouTube analytics. And by the way, all three of these businesses failed. This one did not. If you've ever thought about being a digital nomad, then you have probably popped onto this site, nomadlist.com or nomad.com. It's just an informational site where people get together, forum style. There's also blogs and articles in there where people can research how to travel through countries, including Portugal. Lisbon is a huge one, Porto as well. But this took off, and this did very well. And also this one, Photo AI. Love AI, hate AI, think whatever you want. He thought of this idea where you can upload an image and create a ton of stuff based on that image, including headshots and other things. So this guy, as I mentioned, it's just him and his laptop. These are his businesses right here. This is his Twitter profile, or X, excuse me. And this is how much he makes per month on each one of the things that makes money. If you add that all up, it's $3.2 million. And you might be thinking, well, he's some kind of natural freak that he can do these things. I would counter with that. He's just not afraid. He's not afraid to try. 95% of everything this person ever tried failed. So you could say he's not really an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, he's a serial failure. But then is he? You could see his hit rate is about 5%, where his ideas take off, and then he just lets it go if it doesn't. These are all his projects on the left side. He's posted this again on his Twitter account. But I love this. It's just about having fun. You know, I think of an idea, why not? Just try it. Buy the domain, launch it. See if it takes off. So that's Pieter Levels, and he's a fun person to read about. I would say yes, okay. We're talking about two people now here. One who's got some innate intuition, lightning strikes him, creates two amazing companies. You got another one who seems to have time to do all of this amazing stuff to make millions of dollars. So I'm somewhere in the middle, and I don't have the time for this. Cool story, bro. That's neat. You talk about these two people, their successes. What are you trying to say? I can be a success too? Well, the thing about it is I'm busy. And I can feel that coming from you. I know I say this as well. I'm busy. I don't have the time to sit there and do these things. My life is pretty intense. This is my kid's cat, by the way. My life is pretty intense. I have kids. I have a big fluffy dog. I have a life. I can't just sit here and crack out a company a month, right? We're all busy. But are we? Are we really that busy? That's a question I want you to answer for yourself. What do you do for your downtime? What do you do when you have coded for a few hours and you think, I need a break? You start scrolling. Probably not all of you. Some of you might pick up a crossword puzzle. But I think a lot of you will pick up your phone and start scrolling. I know I do. I watch YouTube. I pick up my phone on the subway. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. No way. No one talks to anybody anymore. And I think this is a problem. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about being a hustle bro up here. I'm not saying you can do it. Just put down the damn phone and you can make $1 million. That is not my point. My point is that we are trading creativity and fun for scrolling, for watching YouTube videos. And I think that's unfortunate because what we used to do is we used to get on our bikes, at least when I was a kid, and go out and torture our friends or try and come up with some silly thing. And yes, I did exactly this. And yes, I jumped my bike over my friends. And no, I never landed on any of them. I don't know how or why. But this one, oh God, it still scares me. And I know I'm going to sound like an old guy about, yes, go out and drink from a fire hose, you know, but am I wrong? Am I wrong to go out and enjoy the outside, to go out and see and to feel, to enjoy the city while you're here? To put your phone in your back pocket and get lost and not use the maps to tell you where to go and what guides to see and what things to do? What if you went down that alleyway? What if you let your creative mind just all of a sudden fill up and you went out and played? And again, it doesn't have to be playing on your computer. Maybe just play with somebody that you're with. Maybe sit and spend some time with a friend that you miss dearly. This is K. Scott Allen, the late K. Scott Allen, a friend of mine. He's the #1 trainer at Pluralsight for many years. This is his birthday in Norway. I would give anything to have another hour with this man. He is a good, good friend. Look around the room. Maybe you're with somebody that you might want to spend another hour with someday. Now, I know that sounds depressing. I know that sounds like, oh God, really? Are you gonna have a keynote that brings us down like that? No, I like to reframe things like this. If you ever follow Stoic philosophy, there's a saying called memento mori. If you're into Zen philosophy at all, they say something similar, but memento mori means remember death. If you see a therapist, what a therapist will remind you is past is depression, future is anxiety, now is life, right now. That is the point of memento mori. Memento mori in Stoic philosophy means remember someday you are going to die. But the add-on to that is treasure right now. Make every moment count. Sit around and look around at what's going on around you and breathe it in and remember the people that you're with because you might not see them again. I know that, again, sounds bad, but flip that around to a more positive statement. Shoot, I might not see this person again, so I'm going to spend some great time with them right now. My point here is that you can make time. Even if you're telling yourself, I can't do a business a month. Really? You can. If you decide to make the time for yourself to do the creative things and fun things that you want. Here's a book I wrote when my kids were sleeping upstairs late at night. I, every single night, dedicated 90 minutes to writing this book. This has been the best thing I've ever done in my life, and it was fun to do. The reason that I got through it is because I turned the whole thing from a task into a fun exploration. I don't have a computer science degree. And I wanted to not feel like an imposter. I didn't want to feel like an idiot when I got in conversations with people who would drop things like, oh, that's order n, order log n, order n squared. Ooh, this is bad. Okay, sorry. I don't know what you're talking about right now, but great. Sure. So anyway, I decided to change all that. And I wrote this book, and it was a lot of fun to do. This is something I did 2 weeks ago, just because I wanted to see if I could do it. I don't think it'll ever see the light of day, but I like SQLite a lot. I like embedded databases. I think it's kind of fun. The fact that you don't need to install a service on your machine, and you can have this wonderful database experience. I also like document databases. What happens if we put the two together? I could take the MongoDB API, and I could plug it into SQLite as the backing store, and let's have a good time. So I made this thing. I'm sure there's probably other things out there. I couldn't find it, but I thought I'd make it. These people sat in their house one day, and they wanted to see who could come up with the worst possible game for the worst possible people. And they just thought of, well, let's see if we can make something that will offend everyone. And they did. And they put it up on Kickstarter. They wanted to see if they can get $15,000 to create a game that would offend the most people possible, just because. And they did. They got that $15,000 and a little bit more. You walk through any toy store, this is front and center. It's Cards Against Humanity. I'm sure you all have heard of it. They sell tens of millions of dollars a month. It's nuts. Again, it's not about the money, but you never know where this creative spark is going to take you. Here's another one. This is potatoparcel.com. Probably one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard of in my life. This person had the bright idea of sending messages using a Sharpie and writing these messages on a potato. And I'll box it up for you, and I'll send it along to someone you love. I don't know who would ever do this, but this person has sold millions, $10 each, and he is filthy rich. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. If you grew up in the 70s, like I did, or the 80s, you've probably seen this. A pet rock. This was a phenomenon. People loved it. They thought it was the funniest thing ever. I got one of these for Christmas, and I remember thinking, thanks, Dad. That's hysterical. You must really be proud of yourself. Gary Dahl is the person who made this. 1.5 million of these units sold in 6 months for $4 a piece. It's just impossible to even consider what you can do, even if it's a dumb idea, just do it anyway, if you give yourself the time to do it. That's my whole point today. That's the end of this. We now have 15 minutes to go and enjoy whatever, coffee. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I hope you enjoyed your time here at NDC Porto, and I appreciate you all coming in the morning. Thank you.